Welcome everyone to day 3 of Hacking HR's Talent Strategy and Acquisition Summit. We are so glad you're here with us today, and I can't wait to get this panel started. My name is Daniela Page. I'm Hacking HR's Chief Learning Officer, and I'll be your moderator today for this conversation. Quick question before we dive in. Have you had a chance to review the Summit workbook? If not, one of my colleagues will drop the link in the chat so you can access it and follow along with the panel. Now, let's talk about today's panel, shall we? Our topic is building agile talent teams for fast-changing environments. And we brought together a fantastic group of experts from around the world to share their insights. Jessa, will you please bring our panelists to the stage? Hey, everybody. How's it going today?
Hello.
Good. How are you?
Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Why don't we go around the room and do a brief introduction, who you are, what you do, and where you're from. How about we start with you, Melissa?
Great. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because I know this is global. My name is Melissa Laswell, and I'm a global talent acquisition and talent management executive with over 20 years of experience leading enterprise-wide strategies at Apple, Walmart, and Pitney Bowes. And today I am the founder and principal of Agile Horizons Talent Consultants, where I advise organizations on workforce planning, talent acquisition and management strategies, as well as organizational development and AI-enabled talent strategies. So throughout my career, during times of hypergrowth, transformation, and budget tightening cycles, my focus has always been on building agile, scalable frameworks that really drive business results while delivering exceptional experiences for candidates, hiring managers, and teams. So that's why I am so excited to be a part of this panel today, along with my fellow panelists. And I am here virtually from Orlando, Florida.
That's wonderful, Melissa. Nice to meet you, and we appreciate you and your energy. Love it. Over to you, Jamie.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jamie Conrad. I'm a global HR executive, currently serving the HG Insights community and organization. I am a almost 20-year veteran in the HR space, most of it in healthcare before moving to tech about 4.5 years ago. And I'm excited about this topic because it's been interesting for me as I transition into the different industries that it became pretty apparent pretty quickly that in healthcare, we were using Agile without understanding that it was Agile. And in tech, we're not using Agile, even though that's what we want it to be. So there's a lot of nuances to Agile and how it's applied in talent acquisition. And this is a pretty interesting topic to dig into. I'm calling in today from the Austin, Texas area where we're going to get about 105. So it's going to be a hot one today.
I love it. Thank you. We're very lucky to have you here, Jamie. Appreciate it. Thanks. And over to you. Is it Ewan?
It's Ewan. Thank you so much.
Ewan. Great. Nice to see you.
Yeah, great to see you.
I'm joining today actually from a little bit north of you all so far in Toronto. I've been working in HR for the last 15 plus years. And my experience has spanned many different industries, healthcare, charity, and then also tech startup. I'm invigorated to be chatting with my panelists here about this topic today because, as you can imagine, working in many different industries and many different geographies as well, it's very fun to have and apply learnings when it comes to what works and what does not work for talent acquisition.
Well, thank you for being here. And I'm actually from New Brunswick, Canada, but I live down here in Mexico in Playa del Carmen. So nice to see you. Thank you. And Jonathan, last but not least.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm John Westover. I'm located out of Salt Lake City, Utah in the United States. And I'm kind of I'm a self-proclaimed scholar practitioner. I've been in higher ed now for 20 plus years and in the HR space for 20 plus years. I'm founder and CEO of Human Capital Innovations, but I'm also a professor of organizational leadership and human resource management. And I'm currently the associate dean of HR undergrad and graduate academic programs at Western Governors University, which is headquartered out of Salt Lake City and has about 200,000 students nationwide across all of our programs, about 10,000 students nationwide in our undergrad and graduate HR programs. So it's a fun opportunity to do HR at scale and to train the next generation of HR professionals.
It's a big responsibility. Thanks for being here, John. Appreciate you. Alrighty, folks, we're going to get started with just a little warm-up question for you all. Agility is often used as a buzzword. In the context of talent teams, how do you define agility and why does it matter right now?
Well, I'll kick off, Danielle. So, when I think of it through the lens of, talent acquisition and talent management, traditional recruiting teams are really requisition driven and they're reactive. And I feel like agile talent teams, by contrast, are very proactive and built to flex within the business needs. And in practice, that means, processes aligned with vision and culture, as well as having cross-trained agile recruiters who are not subject matter experts, but are also generalists who can pivot quickly and technology and data to create speed as well as visibility. And, what I believe at the center is through all of this is really workforce planning and having a scenario-based demand planning that aligns people to the work really before it even happens. And, I really feel like the difference is simple. It's traditional talent teams, they fill jobs and they react to talent changes within the organizations, whereas agile teams anticipate, align, and enable organizations to thrive through change. And I feel that this is so critical and important now due to the micro and macro factors that are impacting organizations internally and externally, and really having a nimble and agile fluid strategy and talent strategy as a whole really helps you to address these organizational challenges and needs. And the organizations, I feel, that master this and are able to embody this will be able to attract and retain top talent and remain very competitive in the marketplace.
Yeah, I agree with the change aspect of it. A lot of times this buzzword of agile, it gets thrown around like it's, work faster. And that's absolutely not what agile is meant to be or the mindset associated with it. Working faster just creates burnout. It doesn't create an agile workforce. So when I think about applying agile practices in the talent acquisition space, it's more about building trust, because when you have an opportunity for the HR team, the talent team to show up in the constant status and change flux that we're always going through, especially now, agility lets talent teams be that steady force that helps the organization to have some stability, some safety in their practices instead of breaking. And so it's not just about filling those jobs, and filling those recs, as Melissa was indicating. It's about creating this resilience within the organization, that no matter what is thrown at you, if you've got those agile practices and processes in place, your talent acquisition team can be the ones that are setting the tone for resilience in your organization.
Agree with what Jamie voiced there. And I think a great point too is agility is really about also working smarter, not harder. So it's not just about speed and adeptness, but making sure that you're adapting your approach to what's front of mind in the market and in the economy, whether that's skills-based hiring, whether that's focus on culture or shifting to meet the needs of the organization. I feel that when it comes to agility, it's really about being that adaptable, sort of a Swiss Army knife, if you will, in partnering with your businesses and partnering with the business needs as they evolve and grow. And as we've seen evidenced, especially in the last year, change has happened at breakneck speed. And it's so important that we're able to mobilize and respond to that as it happens in real time and not be bogged down with process that is set based on what has been precedence for an organization. So keeping that in mind, but also being able to evolve with the needs of the organization.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate your response.
Go
ahead.
Tagging on to that, the ability to pivot in a rapidly changing, hyper-competitive global marketplaces is really, really essential. And whether we're wherever we're at in the employee experience, from the applicant experience all the way through the entire pipeline into the teams, into the workplace, we have to keep employee experience at the forefront in this competitive marketplace. Like, I know with the ebbs and flows of disruptive technologies and AI, and the current labor market ebbs and flows of supply demand, like it sometimes it may feel as though we're not in as a competitive labor environment as maybe we were a few years ago. But the reality is, particularly in STEM fields, in technology areas, like we still have skills gaps and labor shortages, and it's still, we cannot afford to have folks on our teams or in the talent pipeline having negative experiences, because we're not able to adapt to shifting technologies, and the way we're approaching our roles and our teams. So I just wanted to throw in that employee experience perspective as well.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you, everybody. I think it's really clear now how we define agility, and as we move forward in these conversations. So next round of questions are personalized questions that I have for each of you. So we're going to kick off with you, Melissa. What does an agile talent team look like in practice, and how is it different from a traditional recruiting team?
Yeah. So agile talent teams are not built on headcount. They're built on leadership, principles, process, and practices. And I've learned that agility comes from 4 key things. And its process needs to be aligned and supported by the vision and the culture. So you need to make sure that your recruiting processes mirror the kind of candidate and hiring manager experiences you want your organization to be known for. Then it's also cross-training and role flexibility. So you want to develop your recruiters with both deep expertise and generalist skills so that they can pivot quickly as the business needs change. The next area is technology and data, and that's to shorten cycles, create visibility, and enable smarter decisions without losing that human touch. And then the last area and principle that I think is so important is strong leadership and team culture. You must lead with vision and purpose by building a resilient, highly engaged culture that's centered on feedback, innovation, and constant improvement, with a failing fast and a learning focus, because increased engagement equals high levels of productivity. And by providing clear goals, strategy, and vision, it equals personal ownership and accountability. So some examples that I can give is at Pitney Bowes, for example, I centralized the global function and built a global COE with a dedicated strategic sourcing arm to pipeline talent. And we designed an agile recruiting model where recruiters were cross-trained and deployed in sprint teams aligned to the business priorities rather than individual requisitions. We layered in AI-driven sourcing and scheduling tools, workforce planning dashboards, and process standardization, which gave us both speed and consistency across 15 different countries. We also introduced quarterly business reviews with leaders, looking back at results as well as forward to upcoming needs. And that shifted us from a reactive to a proactive talent acquisition strategy. I also built out scenario-based demand planning into our model, which created A, B, and C hiring strategies by using historical data plus internal and external macro and micro trends. And this way, I could forecast needs, I could flex resources, and communicate plans early so that the team wasn't caught off guard when priorities shifted. But also, like I emphasized, process and technology alone do not build agility. Leadership does. And during disruption and change, I made sure my team was a part of the thought process. We ran planning and gap analysis sessions to incorporate their feedback and align goals. I stayed accessible to all 85 of my global team members, not just through monthly global town halls and skip levels, but also through informal touch points like bi-weekly Diet Dr. Pepper Fridays, which were open office hours for anyone to connect. And this communication strategy built trust, like Jamie mentioned, and gave me real-time insight into what my team needed in order to stay engaged and resilient. And of course, we had to also look at data too as well. So we kept ourselves accountable with KPIs, OKRs, and experience metrics, which included candidate and hiring manager NPS, speed, quality, and impact. And by putting equal weight on delivery and engagement, we created a culture of agility that was both high performing and human centered that delivered exceptional results.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Melissa. Jamie, you've recently led HR through multiple acquisitions, rapid growth, and industry disruption. How are you approaching agility in your talent strategy so that it's the difference between success and failure?
One of the areas that I feel like sometimes we get hung up on HR is this idea of rolling out the right program at the right time, or this big program, and it's got to be perfect. And we have to have everything thought through and show our value. And while some of those things are true, we absolutely need to show our value. We can't let perfectionism be the destroyer of progress. And so, I've led M&A strategy and integrations in previous organizations where we're actually going 30 days out and 90 days out from 2 acquisitions in a very short amount of time where I'm at right now. And the idea is to, instead of trying to finalize this perfect talent strategy, instead build something that allows for transparent, bite-sized communication so that even when we don't have the answers, we're still providing communication out to the organization and employees. And we're recognizing, hey, we don't have all of the answers. We don't know yet. We're talking through that. Here's what we're thinking. What do you think? And so we're in the heart of that right now. What does that look like? What does that feel like? Conducting those listening sessions to make sure that we're capturing the concerns in real time and as we go, and we can address those as quickly as possible. Because going back to that idea of providing some stability in the heart of change, M&A is some of the biggest changes that employees and businesses can go through, and those integration plans are really important. And so being that place where people know that they can go to find an answer, even if the answer is, I'm not sure, let me go find out, or we're not ready to discuss that yet, and here's why, what do you think? Having that open psychological safety and that stability, because Agile isn't about having all of the answers, but it's about having the courage to just adapt in real time and being able to show up for people when they need it.
Absolutely. Love that. Very helpful. Ewan, how do you shift from a traditional structure to be more agile and be able to adapt?
For sure. It's been an interesting journey over my last few organizations, going from more traditional structured companies where things move quite slowly and there's very low churn or very low turnover, to tech, which is exponential growth and then exponential downsizing. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of change management. When it comes to being able to adapt and align and shifting from that traditional mindset to a more agile one, really my focus is on understanding why we need the shift, why we need the change. So ensuring that there's alignment and that there's clear, transparent communication as to why the change is happening, providing training and support for all of the leaders. So ensuring that people agree with the rollout of how we're changing the framework and also how this will impact the workflow for the greater team. Everything that we've done or I've worked on in the past, it's really a test and learn philosophy, with that ability to flex up and flex down and change and tweak as needed. I believe the spirit of agility is with that test and learn philosophy. To what Jamie just illustrated with her point, it's really about being able to adapt and really being creative and creating that psychological safety for people to make mistakes and be open to change and be open to making mistakes. With agility, it's also about new integration of technology and tools, which we all know it is very fast and very furious, especially when it comes to AI and its impact on our work and on our workforce and how we work. So being okay with the changes that are happening and the speed of the change, while having a North Star when it comes to alignment as to why that change is happening, and ensuring that there's clear buy-in from our leadership and clear buy-in from our executives when it comes to the need for the change and the why we change, with some flexibility on the how.
I love that. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. John, how have you embedded agility into your talent acquisition processes without sacrificing quality or the candidate experience?
Yeah, first, I just want to reiterate what was shared previously, around an experimentation culture, around, being willing to continually learn, ask questions. I think that's at the heart of what we're talking about today. And so there's always resistance to change. It's part of how we're hardwired as humans. And so there's always going to be that. But we can, start to create a culture within our organizations of just continual readiness for change, meaning continual learning, continual growth, continual experimentation, rapid fire, trial and error, and learn from, quote unquote mistakes, so that you can move things forward. And so I think as we try to navigate hiring and talent acquisition, succession planning, all of these different aspects of how we have our team formulated throughout the talent pipeline, we can strive for that culture of readiness of change, that we can that will then influence all these other pieces. I think we've all experienced having for example, a talent acquisition team that isn't necessarily prepped for a new applicant tracking system, for example, that they're trying to implement, or new AI applications involved in the hiring process. It requires continuous effort to reinforce that psychological safety and the learning that needs to occur, so people can adopt these new technologies. If you just come forward as a leader and say, "Hey, this is the new thing we're using, use it," it's not a surprise to anyone that doesn't work. Like, that's not the way to go about change management in implementing new technologies. And so I don't know, there's a lot of different pieces that can go into this, but ultimately I think it really comes down to that experimentation culture and just readiness for change always.
Readiness for change, always. I think we all agree with you. Alrighty, guys, we have some core questions that I'm just going to throw out there, and I'd love it if you all, would jump in and contribute to responding. All right, we're going to kick us off with this question. What's a leadership lesson you've learned about guiding people through uncertainty that you now apply when building agile talent teams?
I'm happy to jump in here first. One of the sort of key lessons that I've learned as I've worked with different leaders across the organization is not trying to propose a solution individually. It's about building a solution together. That institutes buy-in from across the team. It ensures that there's alignment on what the problem that we're trying to solve is, and then also making sure that people understand where the uncertainty is stemming from. So it's not about being able to be the person with every single answer. I don't think that's realistic when it comes to anyone. As great as AI is becoming, we still need our own form of critical thought to apply to these scenarios. I believe that just partnering and understanding and then working with the team to ensure alignment and then ensure that we're moving forward with a solution that makes sense for the business is the most important part.
I want to maybe take that from a different perspective, because I absolutely agree with the cross collaboration and design for aspect of that. But one of the things that's been really surprising to me is this obsession that we continue to have with being involved in every decision. We want us to be agile and move quickly, but everyone wants to be involved in everything and have a say and have their voice be valued. And that's important in some scenarios, but it can't be everything. And so I think one of the things I've learned is when you're applying agile practices and processes, how do you go about ensuring that collaboration happens, but it's not slowing down those approval processes, or, are we married to something that's adding value, or do we need to rethink what that looks like? How do we ensure that trust is there? Do you trust the decisions that are being made? Do you trust the people that are making the decisions? Do you trust the process and the practices that you've put in place? And do you really need to be involved in that decision? Sometimes the answer can be no. And that's mind-blowing to some executives. Sometimes you don't have to be involved in every single thing for it to work through appropriately. So when you're thinking about how to apply, like building some of those practices and operationalizing them, just make sure that you're challenging assumptions on the bureaucracy around approval processes associated with the decisions in your process.
Amen to that. I'll just add, like sometimes we really need to be willing to prune. I like using the pruning analogy for a variety of things when it comes to policies, practices, procedures. If we're challenging assumptions about what's always been done, just because it's always been done, we're going to continue it. We can start to prune back to really the essential, like what's absolutely necessary in these various approval processes and who's involved in each decision and whatnot. Because in many cases, like Jamie just articulated, like you don't have to have 5 levels of approval. You don't have to have everyone involved. You can streamline those elements, which then frees up time for you to involve more voices and generate the buy-in on the big stuff, on the big strategic stuff that needs more buy-in.
And the one thing that I'll just add to as well, Danielle, I think is so foundational and pivotal to what everyone said is around communication. I think you have to have clear, open lines of communication. And one of the core principles of Agile is having those feedback loops. It is having those stand-ups daily or weekly with your key stakeholders, as well as your team that's implementing and doing the work and the changes. And that is something that I think is so critical and important, so that you can make real-time, timely decisions to pivot, change strategy. And I think all of that is at the crux of building trust, which I know is an underlying theme that we keep talking about too as well. And I think that in order to build trust, there has to be repetition and there has to be that support that's built. And I think all of that is at the crux of everything that we've been discussing so far.
Thank you, Melissa. All righty. The next question is, can you share an example of how you redeployed or restructured talent teams to meet fast-changing business needs?
Yeah, so I can jump in. So, I think one example that comes to mind for me came, mid-year when priorities started to shift from one business unit to strengthening domestic global logistics and another business unit that we had at Pitney Bowes. And instead of hiring new recruiters, we actually redeployed a global sprint talent acquisition team that actually expanded across our geographies. And because of this, we were already, and our team was already cross-trained and connected. And we also had the workforce demand planning scenarios created as a part of the annual workforce strategy planning, as well as the QBRs that we had done. The redeployment that we put together only took a week instead of months. And that saved the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it demonstrated to the leadership that our talent acquisition team could flex seamlessly with the business needs. And what might have felt reactive in a traditional model became a proactive built-in capability. And really that credibility positioned TA as a true strategic partner with the business.
That's awesome. Contingency plans in place, ready for deployment. That's great. Anyone else want to share an example?
In a previous organization I was with, we had a situation where the business was shifting pretty significantly, and we were trying to figure out how to keep up from a talent side. So going back to the idea that was mentioned earlier about working smarter, not harder, we made sure that we involved our recruiters in co-designing what that new structure was. That allowed us to stretch them in their professional development into the roles that they were looking for, and that would also support the business. We made sure that we prioritized building the skills and the skills gap for those recruiters, so that we not only were able to identify, but put professional development plans in place for them that allowed them to expand their skill set to support the business, but also to support those agile, more resilient kind of mindsets. And then, when we deployed it, it took us about 90 days to put the plan in place, and then another a couple of weeks to really try it out. And we trialed it with a couple of hiring managers specifically before rolling it out to the rest of the organization. But that helped to speed up all the way around. Our time to hire was reduced significantly, and we were able to move with that business shift in a way that allowed for those hiring managers to feel really confident in the candidates and the talent and the way that our recruiters were approaching that business shift and supporting their success. So it was more about empowering ourselves to help lead the change and be able to support the change in a way that, again, was able to build that trust from the rest of the organization. And it didn't take long before, our recruiters were being bragged about, and more hiring managers are like, hey, I hear you're doing this over here. Why am I not involved in that? And so it became an easy rollout to the rest of the organization.
Thanks for sharing, Jamie. Alrighty, I'm excited for this next question. What role has technology and AI played in helping your teams operate more nimbly and strategically?
Happy to jump in here. With my
I can go
teams,
ahead and jump in.
oh, go ahead, Jonathan. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, I would say with my experience in integrating AI and technology across teams, really it's about making sure that you're investing in the right technology, and also doing trials. You don't have to invest in the full subscription to get a sense of how it will work. So similar to that test and learn philosophy, you need to be able to try and test and learn and ensure that it does work for the organization prior to pulling the trigger on a large scale investment that can have impact on budget for year-over-year cost considerations. Part of this is really just integrating some of those fun free tools that you can pilot within different settings while having respect for content, data privacy, and data security, and also using integrations within existing systems. Great example of this is within many ATS frameworks. They're starting to integrate AI handily into how you evaluate candidates. And by testing these areas for accuracy, being able to use it not just as an assistant, but starting to use it as a partner and see if that's feasible longer term, you're able to really see and play with the ideas and the technology that's front of mind and front of market. And this in turn also, I find, engages your team so that they're more curious and they're more invested in testing and learning and keeping that agile mindset when it comes to growing and developing your approach to talent acquisition and talent strategy. So then it doesn't just land on an individual or on a core group, it lands on everyone to explore, test, learn, and explore.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to share?
I'll just tag on to that and share, right? Like constantly be sharing what you're learning with each other and create learning communities around these technologies. It's also like super important to recognize that there are just so many different AI tools that are being launched and are being put out there constantly, weekly. I mean, it can be overwhelming. And so you don't need to do everything. You don't need to use every tool. Try them out. Rapid experimentation is good here. You know, try, be selective, try things out. And some things will work, some things won't. And that's okay. Like you don't have to try to adopt everything and every last tool, but creating that mindset of like, we're going to continually experiment. We're going to share what we're using, the use cases, how they're working, what's not working well. Then you can start to find those things that are really going to increase your efficiencies and whatnot. The other piece is, of course, you always have to have a human involved in this. Like there's quality control issues, there's bias issues, there's all sorts of potential challenges in using these new tools. And I know that freaks some people out, job displacement, task displacement, all these other fears. But the reality is, you know, the employee that knows how to use the AI tools is the one that's going to be protected from displacement. And so finding what works without getting overwhelmed, I think is really, really important here.
That's great. Thanks. Melissa, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'll jump in really quick and give some couple of real life examples too as well about using technology. So at Walmart and Pitney Bowes, we used our CRM to rediscover silver medalist candidates and to cut our time to hire significantly. You know, another example was at Pitney Bowes, we implemented a new ATS for CDL hiring, which reduced hiring time from 40 days to 21 days for over 300 drivers that we hired annually. But I think what's really important to understand here with any technology, which includes even the advancements with AI, it's a balance, right? Tech wasn't about replacing people. It was about giving recruiters space to build relationships, to guide leaders and elevate the candidate experience. And that's how tech really enables agility. It creates space for really human judgment. My one piece of advice that I would like to give everyone, because I know that AI and technology is being advanced at such a rapid pace right now, is that whenever you're considering new technology as a solution, you always need to ask yourself this question, what am I trying to solve for? And if you start with this question, it will always lead you to the right solution. And sometimes the right solution isn't a technology change or a tech stack change. It could be about your process. And so I think it's really, really important that as you're thinking through adopting new technology, whether it's AI or systems, that you really ground yourself with thinking through what am I trying to solve for here?
That's great. Thank you, Melissa. And looking at the time, folks, we've got 1 minute left. So really quickly, for leaders who want to start building more agile teams today, what would be a first step? And I just want a little brief response from a few of you, if you could.
I'll start.
Oh, go ahead, Jamie.
Human design is the whole point. So
Okay.
start with what you're trying to accomplish and the human experience in the workplace as your starting point and build around that. Make sure that you're building with that end goal in mind and you're bringing the people in doing the work to understand the impact that agile mindset and those agile processes are going to have on what that human experience looks like.
All right, we've got room for one other response.
I'll just share, start small, start visible, and start with skills. I think pilot an agile recruiting team in one critical area by measuring impact with dashboards and feedback loops, and use that data to scale. And don't try to flip the whole model overnight. Build credibility first, and then I would say expand.
Thank you to all of you panelists. We appreciate you so much. The next panel is called Preparing for 2026 Strategic Hiring Roadmaps and Capability Planning. We'll see you there. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey everyone, welcome to our final panel of the summit. And what better way to wrap things up than by talking about the future, isn't it? I'm Sneha and I'm the Chief Events Strategist at Hacking HR, and I'm so excited to be moderating this incredible lineup of conversations that we're going to have right now. And whether you've been with us since day one, or just dropped in today, or just uh, came in for this one particular panel. I hope you're walking away with ideas, energy, and maybe even a few aha moments. And our team would be really happy to pick them up from the comments. If you do have any feedback, please do drop in there. Our last conversation is all about looking ahead. How do we prepare for 2026 in a way that's both strategic and also realistic? And we're not going to just talk about the headcount plans in this particular panel. We are talking about capability planning as well. Who do we want to become as organizations, as brands? What talent systems and leadership will all get us there? So I would love to get deeper into this particular topic. And to get this, I would love for our panelists to be up on the stage. So lovely to see all the beautiful faces on the screen with bright smiles. Thank you all for joining this incredible panel. And I would love for you to introduce yourselves. Just let us know who you are, what you do, and what's a word or phrase that sums up how you're thinking about 2026 today. And yeah, I see Connor. Unmute. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, no, happy to kick us off. Hello, everyone. My name is Connor Sweeney. I'm the Vice President and Head of People and Talent at Form Health. And one word to describe how, look, I would just say excited. I'm about 4 months into my role at Form. It's an amazing organization, and the work that we're doing specifically in this space is very timely for this conversation. So I'm very excited and happy to be here.
Great. I'm happy to go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Malvika Jetmalani. I'm based in Chicago, and I'm the founder of Activist Group and Women Shaping AI. And for me, one phrase that defines how I'm thinking of 2026 is specifically on this topic is going from this idea of how many people do we need to the idea of what can our people do and what will they need to do in the future.
Hi, everybody. I'll jump in. My name is Adrena Walker. I am the Vice President of Human Resources for the University of Vermont Healthcare Network. And the word that I would use is innovation. I'm excited to see what we can create.
I'll go next. My name's Yoan Noble. I'm the Chief People Officer at Fasken, which is a large Canadian law firm. I would say one word. There's so many, but one word is definitely multifaceted. I think in 2026, I'm looking at how do you achieve strategic objectives through talent planning. So really with a new focus on strategic workforce planning and really looking more broadly at how do business goals align to our talent strategies and our goals, and how do we fulfill those.
All right, I'll bring us home on intros. My name is Melissa Moore. I am based in Portland, Oregon. I lead the talent functions for a semiconductor company called Ampere Computing. And this is one of my favorite topics, thinking about the future and how we help shape our talent outcomes. The one word I would say is being flexible, and that maybe it's also being patient, because we are hearing so much about, right, the AI transformation, how that's going to impact our teams. And I think as HR professionals, we're all, I think, maybe cautiously optimistic around like how it's going to evolve, and trying to be patient and flexible to adjust to the shifting needs of our organizations. So it's a little more than one word. Sorry, Sneha.
No problem at all. I really love it. Thank you so much for the amazing introductions. And before we go right into the core area of this specific panel, I would love to touch base a little bit of this particular panel, the topic, with your own personal expertise. So we see how things do look from your own perspectives, from your world. So I would go with Connor first. And the first question for you would be, how do you incorporate external market shifts like talent shortages or new regulations into your hiring roadmap?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I'll start, and I should have added this in my intro. So for those unfamiliar with Form Health, we're the national leader in the U.S. In science-based obesity and cardiometabolic care. So we're a full-service telehealth clinic really focused on obesity and weight management. And I think unique to us, right, being that we're a healthcare organization, is our hiring model is highly centric around clinical hiring. Right. So we spend a lot of time talking with doctors and dietitians and APPs, like nurse practitioners and PAs. And so, I think for us, it's a fairly unique, point of view for us and how we think about that. We have a really, what we say is a best-in-class care model that really requires a significant focus and intention around really how we think about clinical hiring. So, we have incredible providers that work for us that are, on the physician side, ABOM certified, so American Board of Obesity Medicine certified. On the dietitian front, we target dietitian talent that is CSOWM certified, so Certified Specialty of Obesity and Weight Management certified. And so, the high bar for talent and specialization is really important to our business model. And so kind of talent community building is a really critical practice for us in how we think about kind of future-proofing our talent pipeline, right? So building long-term candidate pipelines and embracing the relationships that come with that is a game changer for us, and how we think about talent best practices as we're scaling our organization, maintaining really close partnerships and relationships with candidates that have the expertise and the perspective that we want to hire has been deemed really beneficial for us, and something that we've leaned on very heavily for several years, and kind of will continue to do so moving forward. So I'd say kind of our advantage as we think about the future proofing of our talent pipeline is really around kind of talent community building.
Thank you so much. We really love that. And my next one would be to Malvika. From your founder perspective, what are the top leadership capabilities needed in the age of AI, and what can companies do to prepare leaders?
Yeah, so I think of this as kind of three distinct categories. The first one being just general kind of AI and data literacy. We don't all need to turn into data scientists, but we do need to have some data literacy. We need to understand how these models work, what data is being used to train these models. And if you look at the World Economic Forum's State of Jobs report, the 2025 report, they found that analytical skills are the number one skill that employers are looking for, even in 2025. So I think that is a super important skill. And related to that is this ability to tap into the collective wisdom of human and agent teams. I think agents are, we all know and have heard and read that agents are going to be, and digital labor is going to be a fixture in the modern kind of org design and org chart, especially over the next 12 to 18 months. The other thing I would say is the idea of adaptability and courage. So this is a time where the volume and pace of change is only continuing to accelerate. And there are often times when leaders need to make decisions without knowing the full ROI, without understanding exactly, knowing the data on exactly what's going to happen. And sometimes the cost of waiting to do something is greater than the cost of experimenting. And so that adaptability and courage really come into play. And then the last thing that I'll leave everyone with is change leadership at scale. So I think we've all seen now that clickbaity study that came out from MIT that said 95% of AI pilots fail. A big part of that was organizations are missing change management capabilities. And employees are actively looking for leaders to provide more guidance on AI. McKinsey had a report that they rolled out, I think in January of this year, called Super Agency in the Workplace. And they found that almost 50% of employees, their top priority is they want more training and support when it comes to AI adoption. And simply sending a memo saying we are now an AI first company is not enough. So leaders need to show up and communicate and show up with authenticity and build trust with people. And that is all part of that change leadership that I'm talking about. And that includes being very comfortable saying, I don't know, because often you're going to get questions from your people that nobody knows the answers to yet. And I think it's okay to say, I don't know, but I'm confident we will figure it out together as a team. And I think it shows vulnerability and authenticity on your part in this day and age. So those are the top leadership skills I would say are critical now.
Thank you, Malvika. That's a great piece of information that our audience would love to have. And I would quickly jump on to Adrina. So here's your question. What innovative hiring practice has had the greatest impact in future-proofing your organization's talent pipeline?
So for us, it has been the ability to understand that we need to stop waiting for talent to find us and we need to go find it. So we partnered with schools, we looked at grassroots organizations, but we did something really innovative with our own employees. We did what I like to call dream mapping and working with our workforce development team to help them grow within their roles. So it is not just necessarily where you want to be today, it's where you want to be 5 years from now. And how do you back into that? So if we know that we're going to have jobs that may be better served by AI, how do we back into that? We still need the workforce. Vermont is like a talent desert. So we still need to keep and retain everything that we have. So it's also breaking down the silo of thinking that because I've done this job for 15 or 20 years, it doesn't mean I can do something else. And it doesn't mean I need to retire. And then we also put in very innovative bridges to retirement, allowing people to step down at their leisure, and at the same time mentor someone. And then something that I've done at a previous organization that I've not had the opportunity to pilot here in Vermont is the ability to use maternity leave coverages as stretch assignments to find new and budding talent and to have all the right things and to ask the right questions. We also ask our leaders to do talent retention interviews. Did you create something new? Did you have a new certification? Is there a cross-functional project you want to work on? I cannot tell you how many organizations I've been a part of where the best talent we had was right there. We didn't have to go look for it. We didn't have to recruit. It was right there. It was simply having the conversations. And I would ask everyone on this call, when's the last time you asked your team and was bold enough to say, is this job still working for you? And if not, how do we make it work? Is there another part of the organization you're interested in? And how do we get it there? Many times we silo our own people. because we're so focused at looking on the outside. And we do need the outside to feed the pipeline. That is true. But how are we really focusing on that internal talent that we already have? I think as HR professionals, we all know it's cheaper to retain than it is to hire. So how are we really maximizing that piece? And so for us, that was the unlock. The unlock was to think about, where do we want to be 4, 5, 6, 10 years from now? What do we think? Again, it's a bet. So what do we think we're going to have to replace? And how do we take that talent and allow them to retrain themselves over the next 4 or 5 years to get them to where they need to be? And so the change management process doesn't happen after the decision is made. It works in parallel with what we think the vision, mission, and values of the organization are going to be.
Thank you so much. That's awesome. And my next one would be for Melissa. In your experience, how do you ensure people and cultural strategies translate into real capability building for the future?
Yeah, I have a few thoughts on this one. I think the keys at a very high level are going to be alignment, stakeholder management, and then communication, effective communication. So if I kind of go that next level down, alignment with the business strategy, alignment across the people function. So if you're in TA or if you're in learning and development or in rewards, making sure that there's alignment across the P&C organization with the business and that continual communication loop to make sure that, like, have things changed? Have things shifted? Are we still operating under the same plan? One of the things that then is going to be important is, okay, I've got my plan and I got to execute those regular report outs and connections on some of the key people indicators, right? So that might be performance metrics. That might be using your skills or your kind of gap analysis to understand, did I actually recruit and hire the people I needed to achieve my objectives? And there are going to be some clear indicators, right? Like, are we hitting our company goals? Did we launch our product on time? Are we shipping in the way that we need to? And so it's looking across the spectrum of the business and making sure that the people organization is always really tightly aligned against that plan and that they've communicated clearly how they're supporting the business. So it's both kind of a alignment and accountability practice to ensure that we're hitting our objectives as a people organization. There are going to be lots of things under that, but I'll leave it at that, just as at a high level of what I think about as a talent leader.
Thank you so much. That's incredible. And lastly, we do have Ivan. So what's one capability you're prioritizing today that you believe will still be critical in 2026 and why?
Yeah, so I wasn't able to stick to one for this question, but to underline what Malvika said about this agility and change management, like that is something that we are seeing consistently, right? The ability to pivot, the ability to navigate uncertainty, and to be focused on what is both next in terms of long-term and also to adapt to the short term, right? We have the external world is throwing new things at us consistently. And so it's that ability to then have your long-term goal in mind, but be agile and adaptable in the current environment. And it's really challenging. And so I think that we as a firm have understood that this is something that we need to support our people with. You can't just say to people, you have to be better at change, right? Like it doesn't land for them in the right way. And that sort of goes to my second capability, which I think is empathy. I think empathy is what drives so much, right? It's Adriana, what you were talking about in terms of what motivates your team. You know, where does your team want to be in 5 years? It's you tapping into, you know, your empathetic side of putting yourself in their shoes. And so I think there's internal development that way. But for us, for our lawyers who are helping clients navigate uncertainty and crises and things like that, the empathy is also critical, right? Because they need to understand what motivates their clients, how their clients are rewarded so that they can better serve their clients. And so I think, you know, there's a obviously significant fear in the legal industry in terms of what the impact of AI is going to be. But I think it's it's that empathy, right? Like, yes, we're going to have to be able to deal with agents, but still people want to deal with humans. They don't, want, there's some really critical pieces of advice that they're going to want to get from humans. And what is it that the human brings? The human brings that ability to, be empathetic and really understand where that person is coming from. So I think those are like two of the critical ones. And just to really sort of underscore that ability to navigate change, that is just crucial. And we've seen, I would say, in the last 2 years, some of our leaders just were not prepared for that. And so we've put a real focus on how do we build up our people's ability to conduct change management for their teams, but then also for themselves, right? How do they navigate change themselves and lead through it?
Thank you so much. This was incredible. And I would not waste any minute before we dive into the most important part, which is the core area of internal details. And I would love to open up a little bit and deep dive within the conversations. And meanwhile, I would encourage all our participants and our people on the chat box to please add up any questions you have for our panelists into the chat, and we will absolutely make sure that we would pick a couple from any of the chats at the end of this panel. Thank you so much. And diving into this core details, I would start with how are you approaching workforce planning for 2026 to balance immediate hiring needs with future capability building? Anyone can go first.
I can jump in here. See, we're approaching workforce planning for 2026 with really a dual lens. How do we continue to meet today's hiring needs while deliberately building the capabilities the business will depend on in the future? In the near term, that means ensuring we have the right people in place to deliver on the immediate growth goals that we have in place. Filling critical revenue driving and patient-facing roles quickly and effectively. But in parallel, we're designing a longer-term architecture that emphasizes scalable skills, leadership readiness, and adaptability and resiliency. On that note specifically, we're actually going through as an organization right now a fairly comprehensive job architecture overhaul. To help drive deeper insight and consistency in how we measure and career path towards things such as leadership readiness, kind of going into a continued phase of growth. I think, look, all of this requires, from my perspective, tighter integration across HR, the business leader population, and finance. We're using, detailed and predictive modeling to forecast demand, layering in scenario planning for multiple growth trajectories that could effectively take place, and then really aligning our hiring plans directly with strategic initiatives. Right, we are an OKR kind of objectives-based organization, and so as has been called out on the panel already, those objectives need to play a huge role in kind of how we think about continuing to grow the organization. By building talent pipelines now for emerging capabilities like digital health innovation, and as we've already called out, AI literacy, advanced clinical leadership, we can really avoid the kind of reactive scramble that comes when market needs shifts, when business goals shift. So this is a very critical focus area for us and our organization going into next year.
I want to touch on what Connor just said, and I think this idea of agility is the name of the game. One of the most common themes I'm seeing in my conversations with CEOs and boards, mainly in private equity-backed companies. I don't work so much with public companies, but for most of them, capital efficiency is really top of mind. I think it will continue to be, at least here in the US, until interest rates come down, maybe even a little bit longer, as long as the economic volatility with tariffs, et cetera, continues. And so given this kind of super volatile and ambiguous environment, CEOs and CFOs are looking for solutions that provide maximum flexibility. So as we're thinking about balancing this kind of long-term and short-term, we need to be thinking about if there are urgent needs in the business, are they full-time needs? Do we think about gig workers, fractional leaders, contractors, consultants, even agents to try to solve those needs? So just as you would in a product roadmap, think about build, buy, or bought. I think we need to apply that thinking to our workforce planning. And when it comes to long-term needs, we need to be thinking about it's obviously important to have a long-range plan, but we need to be prepared for scenarios where we don't know what's going to happen. If someone had told us in September of 2022 that we'd be sitting here today, having the conversations we're having, I mean, there's no way any of us were prepared for that. And so it's important to create different scenarios, have different models for demand and supply and skills adjacencies, but also have a plan for how you're going to reskill and upskill your people. So one of the best kind of case studies of this is IKEA. They brought in AI chatbots to take over a lot of the customer service work, as many companies are doing. And so the chatbot took over 47% of customer inquiries successfully. And suddenly they had 8,500 customer service agents that would have been out of work, but they reskilled these individuals to virtual interior design consultant roles. And by reskilling these 8,500 agents, not only did they protect these jobs, but they also created an additional net new revenue stream of $1.4 billion. And so I think it was Adrina that touched on this idea earlier of it's much easier to develop your talent internally than go out and hire, because it's always more expensive, more time consuming, and frankly, it's a gamble to bring people in from the outside versus betting on the people who are already there and have the organizational and the legacy knowledge. So I think we need to be thinking about what are we HR leaders going to do to prepare our workforce and to prepare our leaders for this rapid upskilling and reskilling that's going to be required in the next few years.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Malvika. And I think the other thing that both you and Connor mentioned is the modeling, right? Because we're in an uncertain time, you have to prepare for scenario A, B, and C, and then have consistent checkpoints in your goals and objectives for your strategic workforce plan. Because no longer is it, okay, we've done our planning for 2026 and now we get to sit back and implement that plan. It's an iterative process. You're constantly going back, saying like, are we meeting this objective, or can we meet this objective with the current talent? What is the use case for AI within this workforce? You have to test it out to see if it's actually possible. Like in the legal industry, there's been wild claims made about what AI can possibly do. But when you actually run the pilot, you see that it's here right now. Maybe in 10 years, it'll be able to do this. But right now, it can only do a very small segment of the work. So it's not as though, when I'm talking to my executive team, I'm saying you can't shed 20% of your workforce right now and just flip the AI switch. And I think it's creating that scenario planning, creating some goals, ensuring that your pilots are within those goals too. Like, for example, the IKEA story is such a powerful story. And I think probably in each of our businesses, we have something where, there's something that, like an assistant, for example, like what could an assistant do? Could they be an operations efficiency expert? Those are the kinds of things that I think you have to start thinking about in terms of your modeling and in terms of how you're going to achieve your strategic objectives. But I also just keep saying, like, it's going to be iterative. It will be a living document that you're going to continue to go back for when you're doing your 2026 planning and throughout 2026.
I actually agree with that. Melissa, you go. I'll go after you.
No, all good. Yeah, I was just going to kind of tie things together, but so kind of the points that I heard and where I think people teams can really influence is encouraging teams, particularly like there's so many challenges that Malvika was kind of alluding to, right? Whether it's economic factors or pressure to reduce headcount, as Yoan was saying around, hey, AI. And so I think it's an opportunity for people leaders to really step up and say, here's our talent, here's what they're capable of, here's our learning strategy where we can upskill so that there isn't this knee-jerk reaction to economic pressure to, reduce headcount or whatever it might be. So like helping paint the picture for your executive teams or your leadership teams to say, here's what our talent can do, here's how they're going to align against our goals, and then just be smart about growth, right? So what are the most critical skills? How do I advise around where we should grow, how we should grow, and being thoughtful around it? And that kind of ties all the things together that Connor, Malvika, and Yoan were talking about, and how I think about like, what role do we play? It's such a huge opportunity to help shape those outcomes.
So I promise you, Melissa and I did not talk before this, I promise, but that was the same thing I was thinking of, is that as HR, often as the senior leader in a lot of places, we sit in the intersection of everything. And so we've got to be honest and transparent with what we actually have. And sometimes when senior leaders are trying to do cost-cutting measures or having a nice return for their shareholders, sometimes as HR, we can water some things down. We need to be transparent, and we need to be vulnerable, and we need to be real. And that's what's going to help us navigate. If we can do it, we can do it. If we have the capability, we have it. If we don't, let's be honest that we don't. And either are we going to buy it or grow it, or do we need to change the business model and all of these services can't go forward? And I think sometimes we get called into the room to solve the people problem, not understanding that the people problem is the business problem. So how are we connecting all of these pieces together to have that conversation of maybe this service line has to shut down for a little bit, or maybe this isn't the new model. Maybe we've, to Malvika's point, maybe we've evolved and it's now a new model and we need to staff that. But I think as HR, we owe it to ourselves and our teams to drive that conversation, to sit down with the financial people and say, hey, the next time you guys do your financial strategy, can we be invited? The next time you guys do your IT strategy, can we be invited? Like purchasing, when you do your strategy for L&D, can we be invited? And actually bringing that HR lens to the table, because often these decisions are made in a silo and then we are told and tasked to work here. And that's not how we're going to survive with our people strategy and our innovation. That's not a strategic roadmap. That's just telling you where to go. And so be vocal, use your voice, knock on doors, have lunch, have coffee, ask to see certain things and get ahead of it, because that's what's going to help you with capability planning. That's how you know what you need to train for 5 years from now. That's how you know where you need to hire, buy, retain, or let go, or as I like to call, allow them to be great somewhere else. That's how all of these conversations happen. And so that will be my encouragement piece, is that make friends, get out of the silo, ask the deeper questions, and don't be afraid to push back, because it's cheaper to push back in the beginning than it is to pay for a mistake you made when you didn't speak up.
Wow, that was incredible. There are brilliant comments that's coming all your way, panelists. So it's really too good. Thank you so much for that. I would love to speak on this particular topic for an hour long, but I think we are at time. I would still wanted to cover up one other simple yet a very interesting topic. So if you are being given a chance to decide whether to invest in external hires versus developing internal pipelines for critical roles, what would you do?
I'm happy to go. So what I can tell you is from some of the case studies I've read, from Unilever to Walmart to PepsiCo, what seems to be the way of the future is AI-powered internal talent marketplaces. And not only because they improve employee experience and they surface opportunities for employees to express interest in terms of career development, but they're also great for business. They help you close capability gaps very, very quickly. And Microsoft has this concept of, instead of the org chart, they encourage people to think about the work chart. So similar to kind of how movie production works, where you have a team of experts that comes together to work on a project, and then they disband when that project is done. And I think increasingly we are moving in this direction because AI is not coming for entire jobs yet. It's coming for skills and tasks. And so my vote would be to prioritize internal pipeline development and then go outside as and when you need it.
I'll jump in. I was going to say, for me, it depends, right? Because there's that, what is the next layer down? So if you're going into a new market and you don't have those skills and you have business objectives or financial goals to meet in a short amount of time, right? Then you're going to need to be able to hire some talent. Like Malvika, I would always lean on who do you have in your company that can help achieve those goals first. And then you have to align to the business priorities and the financial goals and whatever that may be, then make choices around who's on board now. Do we have gaps? Do we need to hire? And so it's really, for me, it always depends on like what are the objectives and the strategy of the business, and how do we meet those objectives through our people and our talent profiles. And there's lots you can do, as all of the panelists have been talking about, to whether it's to upskill or to think about a skills matrix. One of the things that we do at Ampere is we have a talent map, right? So we know what skills are required. We know where all of our global talent is, and thinking about how they fit into our product development strategy. And then as we add new goals, or maybe if there's going to be a new product that the team is thinking about, we align that and say, okay, who's on board that we shift to this new project? Who do we need to hire to fill out the team? So for me, it's always a combo answer.
So for me, it is one of those things where I believe that AI is not just a strategy, it's an amplifier. But there's a danger in outsourcing our judgments to our algorithms. So for me, I like to use AI to test it. Like, can this be done? What does this look like? What is the employee experience? What is the patient experience? What is the community experience? And then the blind spots will tell me, is this a person internally, externally? Is this something we source? Or is it something we back up and we start over again? I mean, at the end of the day, for me, tech is great, data is great, but I'm in the people business. We literally save lives every day. Like, that's what we do. And so keeping people there, it helps me understand what needs to be done. And also, I will say, it also is the culture of your organization too. What matters most to your organization? If your organization is very innovative and is tech centric and is data savvy, then AI may be the way to go and run fast with it. If it's people centric and it values internal talent mapping and it values growing their own. And you love to tell the story of my CEO started as a cart attendant 17 years ago. Like, if that's what your company values, then stick to that particular culture as well. I think often in HR, we get in trouble because we think what works for Sneha works for Adrina, works for Melissa, and it doesn't necessarily. There's nothing wrong with honoring the culture you have, but using AI and external talent to augment that. So I would just caution us to not go so far left or so far right. Continue to find what works. We're all working in successful businesses. Continue to figure out what elevates that success. And it's not always one or the other. Sometimes it's an and. And sometimes that and is the best proposition.
Yeah, and I would just say on the culture piece, Adrina, it's so critical and important in professional service firms. Like, you have to decide if you're a build or if you're a buy organization. There's just no other way, right? So either you develop your own talent internally, and then you have to keep them there because you spend a lot of money developing that talent and growing that talent. And so I think it really is a culture that aligns with the strategy. And you actually are putting that, as you were saying before, like putting that before your senior leaders to remind them of, you know, the culture. And I always get my senior leaders at the beginning of the year to say, like, do you want to grow? Do you want to stay flat? You know, or do you want to contract? And then I continue to talk to them about that throughout the course of the year so that they remember, you know, what they have initially agreed to. And I think that's similar in terms of, you know, is our culture to develop our talent internally? Is that important to us to have that story? If yes, then we have to sort of keep going back to that, right? It's our values and our culture that will sort of drive the approach.
Great
Wow.
pointers. Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, I would love to close up this entire panel with a very short lightning round where I would love to hear all your perspectives on what capability gap do you believe will separate the organizations that thrive in 2026 from those that fall behind?
Yeah,
One-liner or a word or a sentence, anything is welcome.
yeah. I mean, look, I think for me, it kind of comes down to adaptability and learning agility, and I think we've had a lot of great discussion on that today. And then secondly, pairing that with kind of digital and AI fluency. I think those things together are an incredible combination that really doesn't lean into one way or the other, right? It's, how do we continue to drive human-centric work, but then how do we also optimize our organizations to account for the needs to move faster and do more with less? And so I do think it is all about the adaptability and resiliency, but then really leaning into ensuring that digital and AI fluency is a core part of how the organization is operating.
I would second that and say continuous learning is going to be a major differentiator, not just at the org level, but at the individual level. So already we're seeing 66% of leaders are saying that they will no longer hire people without AI skills, but only 5% of organizations are reskilling people at scale. And so most of the upskilling and reskilling is actually happening at the individual level. So we all need to be investing in ourselves to sort of future-proof our careers, if you will. And the second thing I'll say is we need to work on metacognition as a skill so that we can avoid this kind of cognitive atrophy in the age of AI. And metacognition is just a fancy way of saying thinking about thinking. So we need to understand our own thought processes, our own judgment, how we make decisions, so that we can become intelligent about developing our own critical thinking skills and not become over-reliant on AI and delegate all of our thinking to it.
And I think that's a good analogy, actually, maybe even at the organizational level of which organizations are going to thrive and which aren't, right? If you have leaders who are introspective and who are continuously learning about themselves, and then you magnify that on a business scale, and you have businesses that know themselves so well, they'll be able to be nimble and move with the agility that I think you will continue to need in 2026. So I think that's just, when you were talking, I was like, yes. And then, how does your business know itself, and how is it able to adapt and change by knowing what is possible?
I would say being able to fail forward and being comfortable with ambiguity. Know when it works, and when it doesn't work, it's okay. Figure out what to do and go again. And know that this is what it is. This is the way of the world. This is how we're going to be. Change is the one thing that's consistent, and be okay with that.
Yeah, similar, Adrina. I was going to say test and learn, right? And speed. So, that how do you, in technology and kind of innovation, right? It's about time to market, time to innovation. And so for us, it's be able to move quickly, but also be thoughtful in how we learn and how we adapt. So really great thoughts from everybody.
Thank you to each of you for leaving us with thoughtful advices. And this conversation was the perfect way that I think to close out all the 3 amazing days of this Talent Strategy and Acquisition Summit. And to everyone watching, thank you so much for being here. This summit has brought together thousands of HR professionals around the world. And I hope it really sparked some good ideas and strategies that everyone could take back to their work. So let's keep this energy going as we walk into the new year, not just reacting to change, but also leading it. And take care, and we'll see you all at the next Hacking HR Summit. Until then.